Today on an all-new Dr. Phil.
Imagine being 4 years old and left at home for 2 days alone in the dark, locked in the bathroom, without food and water, and told if you move, it would show up on the baby powder and you would be beaten and burned with a hot curling iron. Then, after a whipping session, you are told to sweep the kitchen floor on your hands and knees, and as a punishment, you are forced to eat what is in the dustpan. Now imagine that you're 6 years old and you are told to put your hands on the floor with your palms facing up, and someone uses a hammer to slam down on your fingers. Then, as a punishment for lying, someone takes a pair of needle-nose pliers, pulls out your tongue, and cuts a part of it off with clippers, and then tapes it to a day planner and puts a note underneath that says, Elsa's tongue for lying. That was only some of the abuse that Elsa says she endured for 19 years of her life by the people she thought were her parents.
The former preacher of Emmanuel Baptist Church, Joseph Combs, and his wife, Evangeline, took a 4-month-old girl they planned to adopt and turned her into the family safe. The arrests follow a lengthy investigation involving several law enforcement agencies. The charges against them include 8 counts of rape, 5 of assault, 4 counts of child abuse, 1 of kidnapping, and 1 of perjury. Detectives say the alleged victim, now in her 20s, had layers of scar tissue blanketing her body.
There was no day that I didn't have pain. Slapping, hitting, kicking.
She tried to kill herself the night that got her out of the Combs home for good.
I drank a glass of antifreeze and went to bed.
After nurses saw the amount of scar tissue on her body, they called police. The Combs children quickly came to their parents' defense. Cindy Combs recalled a bike accident and a kitchen accident which injured Esther and created scars. But during cross-examination, Cindy looked flustered when prosecutor Barry Staubus asked about all of Esther's scars blanketing her body.
You can't explain any of those injuries, how any of them's caused, other than the ones you testified here to today, can you?
I never saw her disclosed.
A jury found the couple guilty of taking a 4-month-old girl, abusing her for nearly 20 years, and raising her to be the family servant.
I tried so hard to be the daughter that she wanted, but nothing I could ever do was good enough.
Judge Jerry Beck sentences former Bristol, Tennessee minister Joseph Combs to 114 years behind bars. His wife, Evangeline Combs, sentenced to 65 years in state custody.
I have never seen a case this severe in my life.
Elsa says Joe and Evangeline lied throughout the trial and accused her of making up the abuse.
When I was 4.5 months old, I was kidnapped by a preacher and his wife, Joe and Evangeline Combs. This one time, she put a high chair in her bedroom and she tied me to it. She told me if I moved my legs the way she had it wrapped up around my neck, that it would choke me. She dragged me in the chair down the hallway and told me to say goodbye as she pushed it down the stairs. Vanjie always says she didn't want me. She had her kids. And it was because I was bad, and a lot of times they did not stop until they drew blood. I remember one time she had oatmeal going. I dropped the spoon in, and she told me, well, you dropped it in, you'll get it out. And she shoved my hands in the oatmeal. When she took my hands out and tried to wash the oatmeal off, it was just taking skin with it. We were never allowed to go to the doctor for my injuries. Vanjie would just use anything in the house that looked like it could inflict pain. Curling irons, pliers, water hose, hammers, paddle belts, electric cords with knots in them, and then this metal coil cord. She loved using that one. I remember one time Vanjie got mad and jerked me up by my hair and threw me in the washer and turned it on. The water was filling and spinning. The agitator was pinching my legs, and then she threw me in the dryer and turned it on. And I couldn't breathe anymore. It was so hot in there. I don't remember what I did, but her discipline that day was just picking me up and slinging me into walls over and over again. And I hit the floor, and it knocked out both of my front teeth. One went that way, and the other one went that way. And she kicked and beat me until I found them. And then she just shoved them back up in my mouth and had me bite on them for a few days. They eventually healed, but they were black. I remember when I was 4, Joe had me on his lap and was just telling me that he loved me. He was putting my hand on his privates. So when I was 7, he started making me do sexual acts on him. When I was 19, I just wanted it to end. I wanted to wake up in heaven. So I got me a styrofoam cup that was 24 ounces, and I filled it up. I drank the antifreeze. I just wanted it all to stop. That was my breaking point. I wanted to die.
Well, Elsa, I'm really glad to meet you. I'm really sorry that we're talking about what we're talking about. I just can't even imagine what you have called life up to this point. And you say that your first memory of the abuse, and I want to be sure that I understand your feelings about this and your remembrances of it, happened as early as age 2 or 3, right?
Or earlier. That's as far back as I really remember.
Yeah. And you say you woke up late, and this is when Evangeline had tied you to your high chair and threw you down 2 flights of stairs.
Yes.
Were you aware that she intended to kill you?
No, I mean, well, in a way, yeah, because of the way she tied me to the chair.
You said at about age 4 that I can't call her your mother. Evangeline would take pliers and pull skin off your body.
Right. And the very first time she did it, she said it was her mark of the beast, and that every time I looked at it, I would know where it came from.
And so she would get pliers and...
The needle nose ones. And she would pick a good chunk of skin and squeeze as hard as she could, and then rip it off.
Until it just came off.
She just ripped it out, till it bled.
And this had to be excruciating.
Oh my God, it was. Everything. Just to breathe made it hurt.
And did you know when she was going to do this? What would trigger her to do this?
One time it was because she had hurt her wrist and couldn't beat me, so she could use pliers instead. I really don't have a for instance because she did it a lot. I have them all over my chest and stomach and one right here on my arm.
So she did this numerous times.
Yes.
At the time you were finally rescued from this living hell, you had over 400 scars on your body.
Yes. And I was 89 pounds.
Yeah. At what age?
19.
19, 89 pounds, over 400 scars. Elsa says when police initially questioned her about those scars on her body, she refused to tell them that Joe and Evangeline were abusing her. We're going to find out why when we come back. Evangeline would burn you
With a curling iron. I have 4 on each side. And the doctor said if she'd just gone a little bit closer, she'd have electrocuted both of us. Well, I remember one time she wanted to make an example of me as to what happens to liars. She got the pliers and held my tongue out, and then she got the rose snippers and clipped the side of my tongue. And she took it and taped it to her day timer. She wrote down Esther's tongue for lying.
Elsa says she was abused almost daily. She was beaten with ropes. She was beaten with chains. She was beaten with whips, umbrellas. She claims that Evangeline would even grab her skin with pliers, pull and twist until she ripped off a chunk of skin, calling it the mark of the beast, a quote from the Bible. Now, in the early years, you experienced Joe as somewhat loving and comforting, correct?
Right.
Then, by age 6, he had started to molest you, correct?
Yes.
And I don't want to ask you questions to embarrass you or to be graphic in any way, so you answer at the level that you're comfortable with. But please, I'm not trying to be inappropriate or be graphic with you here. But he forced you to perform sex acts on him, correct?
Right.
And this began at age
About 6.
And this was a daily thing?
This was every time he was told to take me and beat me. He would either do that and I wouldn't get a beating, or he would do that, the beating, and then that.
Uh-huh. And did Evangeline know about this?
Well, the first time he put my hand on him, yes, she walked in and saw that.
Uh-huh. And what was her response?
She started yelling at him, and he said that he didn't feel it because he had jeans on. So then I was beat for putting my hand there.
So you were the bad actor.
Yes.
You were the one that had done something wrong.
Yes.
And you said by age 10, Evangeline made you lie on a bed naked and would burn you. In what way?
With a curling iron. With her curling iron. I have 4 on each side. And the doctor said if she'd just gone a little bit closer, she'd have electrocuted both of us.
She gets a piece of glass and just cuts your arm open.
Right.
And you said she would then pick at the wound and keep it open so it wouldn't heal up.
No, it was almost like healed, and she took it like this and just ripped it back open.
Uh-huh.
And it was deep. I had veins and tissue. I mean, she almost couldn't get it to stop bleeding, except she shoved paper towels in it and taped it.
Okay, you were beat with electric cords. Both of them beat you with an aluminum bat. Joe beat you with a rope and wrapped it around your neck and then pulled you over his back?
Yes, while he hung me.
Were you having trouble breathing?
Oh yeah. But he did it a lot, so he would do it until I passed out. And then I'd wake up shaking on the floor.
And they broke wooden sticks and brooms over your head.
Yes.
And now, you said that Joe had you stand in the gym naked while he beat you with various things. Why did he do that? Why did he say he was doing that?
Because a lot of them in Tennessee was because I fell asleep in church, and I tried so hard not to. That would cause a bad beating.
When you were standing naked in the gym, they would beat you with hoses, electric cords, thick ropes, swing set chains, metal ropes, hammers, and bats. And they would do this until they were just tired?
Yes.
And you were 18 at this point.
Yes.
Your mother knocked out your 2 front teeth. How did she do that?
She was picking me up by my hair and arm or leg and throwing me, literally throwing me. And by the 2nd or 3rd time that I hit the floor, I hit it face first. And it knocked my 2 front teeth out.
And then what did she tell you to do with the teeth?
She told me to put them back in my mouth, and she supervised, like trying to put it back in the holes where they went, and then told me to bite down on them for a few days.
When we come back, we're going to talk about how Elsa finally escapes this situation, what happened, and how this all came about, that she eventually got out of this, and what's happened since then. What's happened to Joe, what's happened to Evangeline, where her life has gone since then, because this isn't over.
I was sent to live with Joe's brother Roger and his wife Susan. They were starting to ask questions, so I started crying, and I started telling him what happened, and it killed him. He fell forward and just sobbed. He could not believe that his brother was doing that. And I felt like I broke his heart by telling him that, because he always looked up to Joe because he was a preacher, he was a man of God.
Well, Elsa claims Joe and Evangeline Combs kidnapped her when she was an infant, and by the time she was 6 years old, Joe sexually abused her and misused quotes from the Bible to make her believe that what he was doing was justified. How did this eventually come to an end? How did you eventually escape this situation?
I drank a 24-ounce glass of antifreeze, and the only reason I know it's 24 ounces is because it was a styrofoam cup, and it was one of the bigger ones.
And this is, you had just turned 19, you were 19 when this happened?
Right.
And at that point, why did you do that? Why did you choose, what made you even think about drinking antifreeze?
Because for some reason, a few days before, she was showing us on the news how people were killing their cats with antifreeze. And then not long after that, it was outside the front door. And when I saw it sitting there, I knew what I was going to do as soon as I got the chance.
So you thought, my choice is to either continue this or escape by killing myself.
Yes.
Now, during this time, were you going to school?
No. No. We were homeschooled, they called it. And they said, we learned something new every day. And I had a babysitter try to show me how to read, and it was just little words. And when Joe and Benji found out, they thought I was trying to be better than Christ, who did not go to school until he was 12. So then they threw the book at me and had me read it, and I couldn't. So I was beat until I could read it, and I couldn't read. So that session went on for like...
You were beat until you could read, and beating doesn't make you read, so you were in a trap. You can't read, you're going to get beat till you can.
Right.
Okay, now, what other... Joe and Evangeline were in the home. Who else was in the home? You don't need to name them, just there were other siblings in the home, right?
There were 3 more brothers and 2 sisters.
Okay. And they did not think they could have children, right?
Right.
And so they were doing this adoption thing, but then they did have children.
When they were getting me, they found out she was pregnant.
Okay. And were any of the other children beaten and abused like this?
Joe slapped the oldest one once, and Benji told him, "You do not treat my kids that way. I don't care what you do to her, but you don't treat mine that way."
So you drank this antifreeze fully intending to kill yourself?
I just wanted to wake up in heaven. I just wanted it all to be done.
But instead, you go to the hospital. You were in a coma for a while.
Right.
You know that now. You didn't know that then, but you know that now, right?
Right.
And when you woke up, they asked you about a lot of scars.
Yes.
And what did you say?
I didn't remember where they came from, or I fell a lot. I would not, or I didn't, and a lot of them I'd never seen. And I lied all the way.
Well, there was a forensics exam on April 7th, 1999, and the note was that Elsa had 410 scars on her body from the abuse. And as you look here, the scars on your head, your hands, your legs, your buttocks, your head, your trunk, the fronts of your legs, your back, to the point that the people said they had never seen anything like this ever in the history of their careers.
Right.
So did you eventually tell them the truth?
Yes, I did. I did, with a lot of support.
And that support came actually from some family members. And next, we're going to talk to Joe's sister-in-law to find out how she convinced Elsa to talk to the police and tell them the truth. We'll be right back. Closed captioning provided by Well, Joe's sister-in-law, Susan, says she convinced Elsa to call the police after she confided in her that Joe and Evangeline abused and starved her. The starving is what they called grounding her, which meant she couldn't eat for days at a time. Now, Susan is joining us on the phone. Susan, are you there?
I'm here.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us in this very important situation. Eventually, Elsa talked to you and told you what had been going on. What did you think when you heard that?
Oh, wow. I was very shocked. I had no idea it was what it was. I had no idea.
Right. And so what did you and your husband do when she confided in you about her abuse?
Well, first of all, once she initially told me, and we talked about it, and I told her, I said, you can't let them get away with this.
Your husband then called Joe and tells him, you need to turn yourself into the police and you need help, you're sick. To do this to a child, this is not okay.
Right.
And you say that you asked Joe how he could do this to Elsa, and he told you you don't know the whole story. What was the part of the story you didn't know?
I don't know. We never got into that. I was so upset. You know, I said, how could you do such a thing? Church
members, where Joe was a pastor, correct?
Right.
They observe injuries on you, a bruised lip, black eyes, busted chin, arm in a sling, things of this nature across time repeatedly that are obviously not normal, and nobody does anything about this.
My teacher, my Sunday school teacher, told me when I came in, I had a makeup patch covering a black eye and a pink belt tied. She said, when you came in with that, we knew. She said, but we didn't know what to do, so we left, but we prayed.
The children's shelter where you had gone returned Elsa to Joe and Evangeline after you run away. So at one point you do escape. You wind up at a children's shelter, they return you. The hospital where you went allowed Joe and Evangeline to take you home after suspected abuse.
Yes, but I was over 18. They were trying to declare me incompetent and have me come in and find out what happened to me.
Right. And he won't allow them to see you. He says you've run away.
Yes.
But you haven't run away. You're there.
I was behind the door. I was right there when he got served. He took the papers and said that I had run away and he didn't know where I was.
And police did wellness checks for 7 months before filing a petition for guardianship.
Yes.
So for 7 more months, over half a year, you continue to get beaten and abused.
They were better at hiding it.
While the system grinds the wheels of justice. So they were just more subtle, hitting you in ways and places
that could be covered up.
Even though the system failed her over and over again, one person did not. We're going to talk about who that was next. Closed captioning provided by...
I'd suffered almost 20 years of beatings. In 1998, I walked onto the payphone and called the police. I asked for Detective Debbie Richmond, and Debbie got on the phone, and I told her I was ready to tell her everything that happened to me from the time I was a baby. And she came down to Georgia and took me back to Tennessee for a statement, and I was actually there when they were arrested. And Angie was walking around the police station, and she was telling me, "Don't you feel bad for all these lies you're telling?" And she was also, she had never told me she loved me that many times as she did that day. And I just kept telling her that I didn't want her love. No, I did.
Tell us what happened as a function of this trial. They were found guilty.
Yes, both of them. He got 100 and some years, and I think she got 70 some years.
How did you feel when they were finally held accountable?
It wasn't a happy day. It wasn't. I still felt like I had broke the family up. The kids didn't have parents anymore, and they were scattered to the wind, and so was I. I felt like I lost my entire family just in one swoop.
This detective, Debbie, you bonded with her early on, and she helped you a lot in the early going, right?
Right.
And there was a time when you were having a really, really difficult time, and they thought that you might not be stable, and there was consideration of putting your daughter in foster care because you were struggling, right?
Right.
And Debbie stepped in and said she can stay with me instead of going to foster care. Let's hear what Detective Debbie has to say about Elsa's case.
This was my first case of child abuse that I'd ever worked because I was a brand new detective. When I first saw Elsa, she looked like she was about 12 years old. She looked like she weighed about 80 pounds. She was just covered in scars from the top of her head all the way to her toes. Every time Mr. and Mrs. Combs came in for a visit, Elsa's blood pressure would go up and she would start shaking. Every time that they would examine Elsa, they would find Mr. Combs hiding behind the curtain. I knew that they were hiding something. I asked her, "How did you get this scar?" She says, "I didn't know I had any scars." Elsa left the hospital and went home with the Combses. I started setting up surveillance where they lived. I never saw her. I thought maybe they have killed her. Several months later, I got a telephone call, and she said, "I want to tell you everything that has happened to me since I was a little girl." The torturous things that they did to her were unspeakable. This is absolutely the worst case that I've seen in my career. When a child's murdered, there's an end. This was a pattern and ruined her life.
She played a big role in getting this turned.
Yes, she did.
Right.
Yes, she did.
And right now, the challenge that you face, and one of the things that you want me to help you with, is to get your life back on track, to overcome the anxiety that just haunts you.
Except for my daughter, I had broken relationships everywhere.
You've made one right decision, because I'm going to help you get out of this. We'll be right back.
Angie's decided she wants to talk to me because she's starting to remember things and wants to apologize. And I feel like it's because parole's coming up. I think she's trying to get out. I think she's trying to soften it, fake apologies, and I'll just be like, okay. And I'm not. I'm petrified that she will get out, and then what's she gonna find me? She's gonna Google search me? She was the one I feared the most.
Well, Joe and Evangeline were convicted on multiple charges of child abuse, assault, and kidnapping. Now, Joe was also charged with rape and sentenced to 114 years behind bars. Evangeline was sentenced to 65 years, and she is up for parole next year. Now, Elsa says that she's terrified that she will get out, and surely the system will not slap her in the face again and let this woman walk out of prison. Now, Debbie is here. And how long has it been since you've seen her?
Since Lena was 2.5, since the custody.
So it's been 12 years?
Yep.
All right, let's bring Debbie out.
Hi.
I hug you.
Oh, gosh. You look so pretty. Thank you.
Well, Debbie, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you.
And thanks for being there for her when you were. And God bless you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
You two have not seen each other for a long time. How do you feel seeing Elsa now?
Oh my gosh. I love her like she's my daughter. I think about her a lot. I pray for her a lot. And this was my very first child abuse case. I've investigated over 1,000 child abuse cases. That was what I specialized as my 30 years as a police officer. And it's the worst one as of today ever. And she taught me a whole lot. I made a lot of mistakes, as we all do. They weren't fatal mistakes, but I made a lot of mistakes, and I would have done some things differently. What's important is that Elsa she becomes strong, and if I did anything to hurt you, I'm so sorry.
Have you thanked her for what she's done in your life?
I did, but not the way she wanted. This is what I was told once.
I'm in this job as a detective, not for thanks. And I don't want to be thanked. And she doesn't have to thank me. My thanks is seeing her succeed. That is where I get my joy, is when I help somebody, is to see them succeed. And she doesn't have to thank me. Sometimes she sees things a little differently, and which is not actually the way that it might not be. If you understand what I'm saying, she might feel that I wanted her to thank me more than what she did, but I don't. I don't need the thanks. Is her succeeding, or anyone else I help, is to see their success.
I thank you for what you did.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I have an idea of what it will take to further help Elsa, and I'm going to be very specific about that when we come back. I want to add to the conversation Dr. Frank Lawless. Dr. Lawless is chairman of the Dr. Phil Advisory Board, and he's co-founder of the Lawless Peavy P&P Center, which is psychoneuroplasticity, which is why we call it P&P. He's joining us via Polycom. Dr. Lawless, tell me what you see and think needs to happen here to give her the best shot at getting a restart on her life and putting this pain behind her.
Well, I think one of the things that's very important is that she's depressed. I mean, there's messages throughout her life saying that she has very little worth, and that needs to be turned around, not only in terms of psychologically, but also neurologically. So I would want to begin some process where this brain development can be reversed and she can start feeling better about herself and consequently give more courage as she goes along. And then we would also want to include her anxiety, like you said, where we have a biofeedback mechanism where we teach her how to be relaxed. She can do this at home. She can teach herself. And then we also want to include more of a group process that we can arrange for on-site so that she can have a sense of being loved and understand what that means in a more constructive way.
So what Dr. Lawless is talking about and what I'm talking about is we would like to fly you to Dallas to the PNP Center and have you meet with Dr. Lawless and have him, he'll start by doing a brain scan and finding out exactly what the balance is in your brain, and then doing some of these techniques to reprogram you neurologically to give you a chance to start with a fresh slate so you can start to rewrite some new history for yourself. And then, very importantly, there is a resource that I have great confidence in called OnSite. And OnSite is the worldwide leader in intensive workshops. They treat and really specialize in emotional trauma and the mental health issues that flow from emotional trauma. And you can see it is a beautiful place. It's on over 100 acres in the rolling hills outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And it's a very customized program. And you can learn more about OnSite at onsiteworkshops.com, which can be found on the resource page at drphil.com. But we've made arrangements for you to be able to go there and put yourself at the top of the priority list and really work through this trauma that you've been subjected to. All right, fair enough?
Yep.
All right. I want to thank all of my guests today. A special thanks to Dr. Frank Lawless and the PNP Clinic in Dallas. They are the best of the best when it comes to these diagnostics and the psychoneurological interventions. And also thanks to Miles Adcox and OnSite. We'll see you next time.